And as you know, last year we did gun control, and this year we're doing homelessness. So I think the kids have questions about what your role is. Some of them didn't really understand what actually happens in Olympia. So maybe you want to start off with your role, what happens in Olympia, because we're excited about. I'll let them tell you about. They've been incredibly involved with the homeless issue, wanting to figure out how it started. They've actually already visited Tent City 3, and this group is probably more active than any group I've ever had. So it's really good to see 6th, 7th, and 8th graders really involved and kind of wanted to get involved in grassroots organizations and change the world. So it's really cool.
Okay. All right, I'll give you guys an overview of the legislature, excuse me, and the legislative process. Our state works in a bicameral system where the legislature convenes every year, but they convene at different rates. So the first year of the biennium, they meet for 105 days. Typically, those dates range from a date in the second Monday in January to 105 days later, which falls sometime in April. We're in the second year of our biennial legislature. So this session is only 60 days. It will run from the second Monday of January, which was this week, January 8th, and it will conclude on March 8th. The governor can always call special sessions, which can run 30 days each. So if the legislature does not complete its business within those timeframes that I just described, they can then meet again for an additional 30-day increments. Why the legislature meets in 105 days and 60 days is the 105-day session, which is always in an odd year. That is the year that they develop their 2-year operating budget. So the state decides, they go through a lot of negotiations and they decide what the priorities are of what they're going to fund. And they develop that budget for a full 2 years. During that year, they also take on major policy items. So our legislature, I'll repeat that to understand. So they deal not only with the budget, but they also deal with policy. And your topic of homelessness is going to depend on funding. So you're going to want to be paying attention to the budget, but there will also be policy bills where the legislature makes changes to the revised Code of Washington, which is called, which we refer to here in Olympia as an RCW. They'll change laws in order to improve perhaps conditions or requirements or prioritize where funding goes. They'll make policy changes as well in regards to homelessness issues. The 60-day session, which again we're currently in, is intended to make minor modifications to the 2-year budget and make some minor policy changes. Our legislature doesn't really follow those rules per se. They still tackle major issues in the 60-day session. It's a compressed time frame.
Okay, Brynn, can I just I just want to make sure you guys know when Brynn keeps saying the legislature, right? Can you kind of expand on that, because your parents, right, are going to vote for people. So we have a couple people from West Seattle that we vote for. They go to Olympia, and so they're making the budgets, the laws, the policies, right? Part of that. And we're going to do some research about who represents us in our neighborhood. Do you want to add on to a little bit of that about legislature?
Sure. What the legislature means is they are the policy-making body of our government. So everybody's heard of a governor, right? Yeah. Yes. So we have a governor, and he is our executive. So to associate it with things we are familiar with, that's like the president of our state. Okay, they are the executive branch. And then similar to what you hear a lot in the news. Then there's a Congress. Similar to the federal government, we refer to our Congress as the legislature. Our legislature is comprised of a Senate, which is 50 members, and there is one senator from every legislative district in our state. And then the other chamber is called the House of Representatives. And in that chamber, there are 98 members. So from each district, there is 2 representatives. So when you do your research, you'll discover that your school district will have 1 senator and 2 representatives. And then all the legislative districts that are broken up throughout the state have the same thing. And so every year, every 2 years, there's a general election where these folks at different timeframes come up for re-election. So in 2018, you won't, but your parents will be voting on representation for your legislative district.
Yep. I'm going to show you who's in our house. They're good people. They're Democrats, and they really want more stuff like this. So, Brynn, can you tell us about anything about what's happening, maybe about homelessness in Olympia? Because obviously it takes money. Does it look like that people in Olympia want to help more homeless people? Because we keep learning about how in Seattle the homeless keep going. We went down the streets. We learned a lot of stories about people they actually all have jobs. And it's really hard in Seattle to work. I mean, it's incredible. These are not lazy people, all peoples of color, and more people are ending up on the streets. Can you get a sense of what's happening down there and maybe how we can help?
Sure. So the homeless issues are very complex, which I gather you guys are already understanding, because you probably ask yourself, how is it that somebody who has a job can't afford to have a home? How come they're living in their car, or how come they're living in these shelters? There are people in that condition who have jobs and find themselves homeless. But then there's also people who suffer from some sort of a health impact, for example. So there is a mental health crisis that's simultaneously occurring in our state, where people have found themselves, due to a variety of reasons, without the right health. In some cases, it could be health care. It could be that they don't have access to the appropriate medications that they need to keep themselves stable, and they just can't maintain a job. And so they may find themselves homeless as well. And then there are just some folks who are, things have happened to them in their lives that, they may choose just to be homeless, that they aren't interested in having a job and earning money to then have housing, that they prefer to live on the streets. I think that population is minor, but there is that case when I hear stories from social workers who go out and they try to give people as many resources as they can to find housing, and the people, they just choose not to follow through and seek out those resources. Because and I've just covered just like 3 of the different types of populations, but there's the diversity of people who are homeless is even greater. So tackling the problem is going to be different depending on the population that you're talking about. So, for example, the families who have jobs and find themselves homeless, that's a case of in some cases it could be a wage gap, where they're working, but the job that they have only pays them minimum wage, and minimum wage does not cover the cost of living. In the Seattle area, the cost of living is very high. So what that means is the cost to rent an apartment is high. The cost to buy a house is much higher than it is in a different part of the state. And then in those regions, the cost to buy goods and services is higher. So restaurants that you might frequent, they charge more for food you know, because they're serving a population that can pay more. So for people who are working in, let's say, the Seattle area, and they're only making minimum wage, they often can't find housing that's close to their job. So then they have to commute. And then there are also those challenges of commuting. You guys hear about the traffic problems. So I don't have an idea of some of the solutions in this way. We'll discover that through, you know, in future sessions, but I'm just trying to, so I'm just trying to demonstrate to you that depending on the population, the approach to the problem is going to be different. So when I was talking about the people who have mental health issues, what the state attempts to do is address the mental health crisis and try and ensure that there's more social workers available who can work with these folks and connect them with their medications, or keep them in a stable environment where they are ensured that they will take their medications so they can be a productive person and go to work, which is what they want to do. But if they don't have the proper medication, they are incapacitated. They're not able to do that. So our state has been tackling it in several different ways. What has always been, or I shouldn't say always, but the past few years, what our state does is there's something called a housing trust fund. So we were talking about the money side of this. So our state would appropriate dollars and collect fees through various programs in order to subsidize housing for some folks. So those families I was describing to you that they just can't make enough money to pay for housing, there are vouchers available to people that the state provides to offset that gap in what they earn versus what they have to pay for housing. And the effort has been to increase that housing trust fund amount so people can, increase the housing trust fund so they can deliver funding to more people in need, because we've seen increases in the homeless population.
So Brynn, just kind of what we can start to do, so the housing trust fund, is people talking about increasing more money for that in terms of, I don't know, the next budget, or has the budget been passed? I'm kind of wondering, you know, maybe who can we talk to? Well, obviously our senator, our two House representatives, maybe we could all go online this week and, you know, get their emails. We can write a letter, we can call them up. But are there other names, or could you maybe next time we talk, get us some more names about who we could talk to and say, hey, we're a group of middle school kids, we're working really hard, what can we do to help? Yeah.
Excuse me. So there are efforts underway to increase the housing trust fund. And there's different ways, you know, you can't just increase it. The state has to find money to increase it. So there's been a lot of different ideas that have been floating around in order to assess additional money to increase that fund, that account. I'll have to do some research myself, because there's a lot of different proposals that are out there. We are in day 3 of the session, so it's too early for me to identify what might be the hot, or I guess decipher what exactly they're going to go after, because there's lots of different legislators who are working on this, and they all have different ideas to approach it. So what usually happens in the legislative process is a committee a committee hearing, is held, where they listen to the different proposals, and then a debate among the committee members occurs, and the chair acts as the facilitator to talk with the members of that committee and decide which is the appropriate, we refer to it as a vehicle, but which is the appropriate bill or vehicle to move forward and continue discussions.
Great. So what I hear you saying is We're really early in the process. This is a great time to start.
Yep.
Last year, I think really was impactful. A couple of our kids came down, and Ollie almost had the chance to testify about how guns are in a community. So we're kind of looking maybe in the next couple of months about how do we get involved? Can we come down? And a lot of these kids are they're great speakers. They have a lot to say, and so what I hear, it's still early in the process, but we can start gathering information. But we so kind of, I don't know, maybe let us know if you hear of anything, or how we can actually start linking up with a group or a committee or something, or that would be great.
Sure. In previous years, I know Lori Markowitz, I believe she's still working with you all, but
yes, definitely, yeah.
Okay, that she usually on the past bills, she's connected you all with a particular bill sponsor and makes that connection. And I'm happy. I mean, anyway, I'm happy to do that. But I think that has always been great. It's been a good, these groups have always been well connected to the right advocate, and we'll definitely get you guys connected to something.
Great. I'm going to have one of the students call Lori right now, and then just say that we're chatting with you, and then we can maybe have them say, hey, Lori, to start making some calls or connections. So we'll have, because Lori's a great networker and a communicator. She's really good at linking us up. So we'll do that today. Any questions that you have? Where we have to kind of wrap it up. Anything you want to know from Brynn, or you have a question she could find out about government, about homelessness, about what she does? Maybe one question or two. What do we have? A couple kids. Just one of you two come up here and come up. She can hear you better right here, and just say who you are and maybe you have a question. Why don't we do that? Just so Brynn gets to know us a little bit. What grade you're in? Something about yourself. Yeah.
My name's Ayan. My name's Fatun.
What grade?
I'm in 7th grade. I'm in 7th grade.
Do you have any questions or something you learned?
One thing I learned, one thing we're doing, we did in starting at the beginning of school year, we started learning about homelessness, because we chose to do homelessness, and because we had a vote and everybody chose homelessness. And then we learned so many facts about like how people become homeless and how many people are homeless. And then we went to a field trip to Seattle Pacific University and we made gift bags and stuff, and we went to homeless and asked them questions and stories about their life and how they became homeless, and then we gave them their gift bags. And yeah.
Great. What was the discussion in your group on why you guys chose homelessness? Do you have students in your group that are at your school that are homeless, and you're concerned about them? Or
yeah.
What brought you guys to that issue?
We do have homeless people in our school, homeless kids in our students in our school, but like we don't.
Let's have these two answers. You guys are part of it. Because Denny, you're really part of saying why we need to do this, and you have a lot of homeless people in your building.
Yeah.
So you have to stand right in front of the camera. But why you wanted to pick this group? So talk about your apartment building.
Every time when my mom or dad comes out of our apartment, we see homeless laying around. And this one time, my mom got scared of a homeless, and she punched him, and she went back inside mad. So we wanted to pick homeless because we don't want to see people laying around and stuff. So, yeah.
We picked homelessness because there are around 12,000 or more. We picked homelessness because there's a big homeless epidemic in Seattle and in the United States. Even though we're the richest, we're one of the richest countries, we still have a problem with the homeless, and we want to try and change that.
Great.
So my name's Millie. I'm in 7th grade, and the reason I voted for homelessness is because I grew up, I was in California, and when you're in California, there's a lot of homeless. And then I came here. Well, first I went to Colorado, then came here. But every day since I've been here, I've seen at least one homeless person. And so that's why I voted for it.
And just like around the world, there's so many homeless people, and Seattle has a lot compared to other places in the world. And yeah, we've heard a lot of people say that they left school when they were really young because they couldn't they couldn't wake up.
The resources.
Yeah, they didn't have enough resources.
And also we chose, I chose, like we all chose homelessness because we wanted to help the homeless, and also we wanted to prevent more people becoming into homeless. Yeah, I think, yeah.
We're gonna have to wrap this up. Denny, we want to say hello real quick?
Well,
Nice and loud.
my name is Josiah Moore, and we're doing the homeless thing.
Right,
We're
quick.
doing the homeless thing because, I voted for the homeless because, you see, the homeless people on the streets and stuff like that, and I just, really feel bad for them, and I just tried to, try to, get my parents to pay them, $10 or something, and, it's just, I really feel bad for them, and, people are actually, dying because, they can't, pay for their bills or pay for the food, and people are, and then that makes people, and that's just, I really feel bad for them.
To be exact, 70 people have died. More than 70 people. Somewhere around there. People have died last year because of the cold or violence or whatever. And Seattle's also been in an emergency homeless issue for 2 years. So,
Okay, I think, Brynn, we've got it. Actually, I just realized we have to do the Denny Way forms, and so we got to wrap it up. So,
Okay.
we'll
All
talk
right.
to you next Wednesday.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.